All right, let's go ahead and get started. So thank you for being here. My name is Sukhdeep Kaur, and I serve as a board member of the DasvandSeries network. In my full-time role, I'm an educational advocate in Texas. So I'm grateful to have the honor to serve as the facilitator for our wonderful esteemed panel today. Those of you who may not know, the DasvandSeries network is a national nonprofit organization that allows individuals to create a portfolio of giving across numerous social causes and is rooted in transparency. As donors, we have the ability to fund the education of a child, to raise money for oxygenators during worldwide crises, to furthering civil rights causes. We even have the ability to help our kids learn to read and become self-advocates. This allows our DasvandSeries to make an impact in our community. We assist 60 plus well-vetted organizations and grassroots community projects in finding donors through the crowdfunding platform that is rooted in transparency. Our live event today is featuring Kaurs leading Sikh communities. It's a panel discussion, and we're going to be featuring core activists making lasting impacts in our community. This discussion is part of our DasvandSeries. It's a live speaker series that engages various trailblazers in the Sikh American community to discuss how their work is bringing positive changes for us. The discussion will be followed by a Q&A session, so feel free to use the Q&A chat feature to share any questions that you may have. We will hear today from 3 female activists, learn about their organizations and their work, which range from supporting civil rights and human rights in the community, empowering Sikh voices, training Sikh American youth and community sevadars, to supporting Sikh family safety and female empowerment. I would like to introduce our panel for today. First, we have Anisha Singh, who is the Executive Director of the Sikh Coalition. Prior to the Sikh Coalition, she worked as the Director of Judiciary and Democratic Affairs at Planned Parenthood Federation of America. We also have Kiran Gill, who is the Executive Director at SALDEF. And prior to even serving in the ED role, Kiran helped launch the Sikh Lead New Jersey program, which is one of SALDEF's flagship programs. And then we also have Jodhka, who is the board chair of the Sikh Family Center. She's currently an attorney working as a law school advisor at the University of California, Berkeley School of Law. I'd now like to offer the opportunity for each of our panelists to introduce themselves briefly. Thank you so much, panelists, for joining us. We are immensely grateful to have you as a part of this discussion. I know I can't do what you all do, and it is truly, you give seva every day, and we really, really, really appreciate you for what you do. So as you go around and introduce yourself, it'd be great to hear the organization that you work for, include a little bit about the mission, current role, any recent projects you'd like for our listeners to hear about. A few things about your background, including maybe steps that you took before you got into the current position. And then of course, your why. We'd love to hear your story and your why behind the work that you do. So I'd like to start off by Kiran, if you could start with first, and then we'll go to Anisha and then end with.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Sukhdeep. It's amazing to be in this space. Thank you, DVN, for creating this space and to be alongside all of these wonderful, amazing Kaurs that are doing incredible things in our community. As mentioned, my name is Kiran Gill. I'm the Executive Director of SALDEF, the Sikh American Legal Defense and Education Fund. We are a national Sikh American advocacy organization based in Washington, D.C. And our focus is building leadership and capacity in the Sikh American community. So at the heart of our mission is a fundamental belief in our community's power and potential. And we execute this mission in several key areas, including media, policy, research, education, and civic engagement. We have a number of programs that we execute in addition to our policy and research that we do in DC, but I'd like to highlight 2, and they're also available to view on the DVN platform. The first, as mentioned, which I've been involved with for quite a while, is the Sikh Lead Internship Program. It's running this summer. We currently have over 80 participants between our DC and regional internship program. And the program partners with congressional offices, federal agencies, and partner organizations to provide Sikh American students with enriching internship experiences, with leadership and development training, mentoring, and opportunities to get involved in community projects. The purpose of this program is to create a robust pipeline of aspiring Sikh American leaders, and alumni have gone on to work on Capitol Hill, in the White House, Department of Justice, and in key places where decisions are being made. I'd like to just highlight two projects that the Sikh leaders have worked on that are current, and I think certainly love to everybody to be informed on. One is last year as a Seva project, we had a group of Sikh leaders work with Nishcom TV to produce a documentary called Seva, which highlights Sikh contributions and Seva during the time of COVID. We just found out this week that this film will be premiered on the World Channel with PBS. I'm super proud, and we'll have the dates probably in the next week or two, but definitely please tune in and we'll share out more information about that project. The second thing I'd like to highlight is the Sikh American Health Survey, which was an initiative started by the Sikh Leadership Development class this year. It is a first of its kind survey, and it takes a deeper look into our community's access to healthcare. And I think that link will be dropped in the chat, and we'd certainly love for you to participate in that survey and help us better understand, again, our communities, what our community's healthcare looks like. The second initiative that I know DVN is also sharing out is the Sikh Vote initiative. Sikh Vote is a way for our community to build our overall voting power and to raise our voice in the political sphere. We do this through direct outreach, through phone banking, mailers, relational organizing with materials in English and Punjabi. The last initiative I'd just like to highlight, which is not a solely SALDEF initiative, we are working in conjunction with the Interfaith Conference of Wisconsin and with the Coalition, is the 10th anniversary of the Oak Creek commemoration. We have events from August 4th through August 7th. The Candlelight Vigil and Remembrance event is August 5th. And August 6th is an interfaith and community event where we will be having interfaith workshops. We'll be discussing ways where we can combat hate. We'll also have games, activities, Gurdwara tours. So please, if you are in the area, we would love for you to join us. We'll drop the link in the chat for that as well. The event will also be live streamed, so we will be sharing that information out with everybody as well. Just a little bit about me. Before I came to SALDEF, I actually ran my own company for 15 years, which I started in my 20s. So I've been in an executive role for a long time, and I think that's given me certainly a lot of insight into what that looks like, and also just a belief that you can do anything you put your mind to at any age. I also started two local nonprofits, one around interfaith and community work, and one around political organizing for South Asian women. As mentioned, I help with the Sick Lead program in New Jersey, and I was a volunteer trainer for SALDEF. And why my passion for this work, it is certainly tremendous work, and it does require a lot of time and energy, which I think I have, and I'm sure all the ladies on this panel have as well, and I certainly admire them for that. I'm in it because I truly believe in our community, and especially our youth, and I have a personal belief that when you empower people and give them the resources and tools to be successful, anything is possible. So just like to see that sort of mission through all our programs and through all the work that we do, and just happy to be here in this space. So I will turn it over to the next speaker.
Thanks so much, Kiran. So like it was mentioned, I'm Anisha Singh. I'm the Executive Director of the Sikh Coalition. Thank you so much to the Dasvandh Network for putting this together and highlighting all of our backgrounds, organizations, and the amazing work that all of our organizations are doing. So the Sikh Coalition was founded in New York in response to the discrimination and backlash that we saw against Sikh Americans after 9/11. The following 3 years, the Sikh Coalition was a volunteer organization with a core group of a mighty group of 15, mostly young Sikhs who devoted their time each week, in addition to their full-time jobs, to protect our community. In September of 2003, we hired our first staff member as our legal director. And since then, the Sikh Coalition continues to remain headquartered in New York, has a robust staff of hardworking individuals who are sitting in many different departments within our organization: advocacy, community development, education, legal, and media work. That includes doing direct representation on hate crimes or employment discrimination or bullying cases that come our way with our 5 attorneys. That's community development work that's happening on the ground at Gurdwaras, with the Sanghats, with community members to make sure that there's empowerment, direct dialogue with elected officials, direct dialogue in response to hate crimes or bullying or other incidents, and in response to any needs that are coming out of the community, media work and advocacy work as well. And one part of our work that I think, coming into this role, I've only been in this role almost 3 months now, that I find absolutely amazing that our team does is our education work, where we have over 14 states right now where we've been able to add Sikhi and Sikhism into state standards and curriculum across the country as part of our robust proactive work. And so that remains a big part of our work, and something that we continue to build and hope that we can expand to other states across the nation. And so for 20 plus years now, as the Sikh Coalition enters its 3rd decade, we have been defending Sikh civil liberties in the community, courtrooms, classrooms, and halls of Congress, and making sure that we're keeping in touch with the Sangha to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the community. Currently, we're hard at work on a number of projects around the 10-year Oak Creek anniversary, as mentioned by Kiran, jointly with SALDEF to support the Sikh Temple of Wisconsin as they plan their commemorative events. We also just wrapped up a congressional briefing with members of Oak Creek, Charleston, and Pittsburgh communities yesterday, and have an ongoing campaign to encourage Sangat members to contact their elected officials in favor of 3 pieces of legislation to keep our communities safe from hate violence. Beyond that, we continue to prepare for rapid response moments throughout the country. We're preparing for a 2nd annual virtual legal conference in September, and getting ready for Get Out the Vote work later this fall. And so excited to be here, excited to lift up the Sikh Coalition's work and be in this role. So to the other question of what I did before coming here, it's actually quite poetic, I think. My passion for civil rights and public service actually came out of the Sikh Coalition early on. Like many of us in the days, weeks, and months after 9/11, I was sitting there shocked and mourning with the country, but also shocked and mourning what was happening to our community and that backlash. And so I started volunteering at a very young age with the Sikh Coalition as it was being founded and built up. And just being able to see the kind of work that the organization was able to do inspired me to pursue public interest law myself. And one of my favorite stories to tell is when I was in college, I continued to volunteer for the Sikh Coalition, but I got a call from one of the then staff members who said, we have the situation where an individual who is in Ohio in prison needs to be transferred to a Florida prison system. But the problem is that Florida law requires their hair to be cut. And so they would have to remove their turban. Can you help? And I was just in college, and I was, the reason they called me is because I was in Tallahassee, which is the capital of Florida. And so I just literally just wrote a resolution and walked it over to the state capitol, not knowing what I was doing, knocked on some doors, and believe it or not, somehow we were able to get him transferred to Vermont instead, where he was able to keep his articles in faith intact. And so that kind of sparked me to go to law school and pursue civil rights law. I did a little bit of that after law school as well. And then I moved on to the Center for American Progress, where I did broader democracy work, voting rights, focusing on judicial nominations, and then also doing anti-Muslim bigotry work in the 2015-2016 election cycle for the progressive think tank there. And then in 2019, I switched over to Planned Parenthood, where I built out and led their democracy and courts programs to prepare for the fights ahead that we knew were coming there. And also being that voice for communities that were trying to get more involved in reproductive health care on the voting rights side. So, as the Sikh Coalition now has entered its 3rd decade, as we're commemorating the 10-year anniversary of Oak Creek, it felt like the right opportunity to come back to the organization that started my journey, and give back and get back in the weeds with the community and make sure that we're able to work together to build a country that we know can be better, that can be more inclusive, diverse, and more tolerant and filled with love for all. So hand it over to Deep.
Thank you, Nisha, and thank you, Sukhdeep and the Desvandh Network for having me here today and for allowing me the opportunity to highlight the work that Sikh Family Center does. And I'm really looking forward to being in conversation with these other fabulous Kaurs. So my name is Deep Kaur Jodhka. I serve as the board chair of Sikh Family Center. For those of you who may not know, Sikh Family Center is the only Sikh organization that addresses gender-based violence and harm in the United States. We are a national organization, which means that we serve the entire Sikh community throughout the country. And our mission is very firmly rooted in promoting community health with a special focus on addressing and supporting survivors of domestic violence and other forms of gender-based violence and abuse. So to do this, we actually take a multi-pronged approach, and we use several different strategies: intervention, prevention, and education. I think if you've heard of Sikh Family Center, you're probably most familiar with the fact that we operate a national non-emergency helpline. This helpline provides triage and intervention support. It's actually staffed by volunteer peer counselors who respond to people calling because they're facing threats to their health, safety, or security, which is very broadly defined. Most of the people that contact us are because they're addressing or dealing with domestic violence, but not always. And we respond in a way that's trauma-informed and offer services both in Punjabi and English as well. I do want to highlight one new program that we're offering, and that's the Community Advocates Training Program, which the Desvandh Network has also been highlighting as well on their platform. And this program is for sevadars in their community who want to learn more about the basics around providing trauma-centered and community-centered support to people who may need resources and who may reach out to them for help or assistance. And this training will take place over 2 days. It'll last about 6 hours, and there we're hoping to have both in-person options and virtual options. So I will share, after I finish talking and I find the link, I will share the link in the chat box if you're interested in applying. But we'd love to hear from you, especially from a lot of states where we don't have necessarily a huge Sikh population. We really want to be able to connect people to other people in the community where possible. So in addition to our direct intervention services, we also conduct outreach and training, and we provide technical assistance both to Sikh organizations and gurdwaras, but also non-Sikh organizations as well. So in a survey that Sikh Family Center conducted back in 2018, in our report, we found that 1 in 4 Sikh women have been the direct target of family or domestic violence. And this is actually very consistent with national statistics, regardless of the community, in our broader community as well, not just the Sikh community. But our traditional social services agencies often aren't equipped to handle the unique needs of Sikh and our own immigrant community of color. So, one reason why we provide these services is so that we can actually work with people, service providers, in fact, who may not have worked with Sikhs in the past, and share information, provide assistance, so they can better serve our community as well. And in addition to all this, we also, I think people don't recognize this, but a big part of what we do is we actually work alongside our community to change the cultural conditions that allow violence to even happen in the first place. And we do this by helping students facilitate conversations around consent and boundaries in their peers. This is our SADG workshop. We also hold listening circles with our community and talk about what is abuse, and invite people to learn strategies and support each other in those sessions. And we most recently, in the last year, we put together a family violence resource guide specifically for Gurdwara leadership. We try to engage Gurdwaras in a lot of different ways. We used to table a lot at Gurdwaras before the pandemic. We've done a lot of flyering. You may have even seen our Flush Out Domestic Violence flyers in Gurdwara bathrooms, but this guide specifically was developed after talking with Granthis and talking with people who work in Gurdwaras, and offers steps that Gurdwara staff, Granthis, committee members can take to ensure that people have resources and information. Really, the first step is to make sure that they do no harm. And the second step is hopefully to provide information and resources so they can appropriately respond and share if someone is fearing for their health or their safety and want to seek assistance. So we're really trying to shift the dialogue in our community and really instigate discussions on how can we address gender-based violence at a community level, because this is really how gender-based violence, this is how the culture will change, right? It's really important to involve community members, whether it's men, women, children, elderly, young, and really to take on this issue and to support strategies, accountability strategies as well. So that's a little bit about the Sikh Family Center. And as I was preparing for this, I realized like I've actually been working with Sikh Family Center in some capacity since in the past 10 years, actually. Like I didn't realize it, but my involvement has spanned almost a decade now. And I started by volunteering with Sikh Family Center when I was actually a law student. I've always personally been really fascinated with the role that attorneys and lawyers can play in addressing issues that impact people's stability. You know, I became a lawyer because, you know, I recognize that people often are thrust into these legal situations and conflicts, and that can have really dire consequences on their ability to remain housed or be sheltered or put food on the table. And often they're experiencing these conflicts because they live in poverty and are also at a huge disadvantage because navigating these conflicts require financial resources to hire attorneys. So I actually became a lawyer because I wanted to be a legal aid attorney and help bridge that gap. And that's kind of what I did for the past almost 9 years as I worked in direct legal service in an organization providing direct legal services to various vulnerable populations, including people who were formerly incarcerated, military veterans, people with disabilities. And so, you know, working with Sikh Family Center has been an opportunity and a chance to really apply the skills and the information resources and networks that I developed to really benefit my community in some way. You know, there are a lot of overlap in the issues that I saw that my clients were facing and that also that I see my community is facing, whether it's, you know, seeking safe options, addressing housing instability, accessing social security or safety net benefits, you know, accessing healthcare, mental health resources. So that's been my trajectory. And you know, I pivoted recently and now I work at a local law school and I essentially develop programs and counsel students who want to actually pursue social justice and, you know, public interest legal careers. So it's really exciting. And, you know, a big part of what I do is like remind people throughout their law school career that like, you know, why did you come here in the first place? You know, and so these questions are actually really nice because they remind me to do that same reflection in some way. So for why I do this work, it really is for me a labor of love. You know, it allows me to remain connected to my community, to really use my skills in a way that's useful to my community. And I get to do it with especially smart and very fiercely loving Kaurs in the process, who really believe that everyone deserves to live and to feel safe and secure in their own homes. So I just want to actually take a quick minute to acknowledge that I'm here on this panel, but I'm actually in many ways representing Sikh Family Center and a team who is actually entirely made up of women, from our executive director to our staff to our board of directors, and many of our volunteers are as well. And I'm really on this panel because like we could not have all of them here and they probably have much more interesting things than I do to say, but I'm really happy to be here and to represent them and to really highlight the work that they're tirelessly doing as part of Sikh Family Center. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for those wonderful introductions. I know even for those of us that may have heard, you always hear something new every time we learn about your fabulous organizations. And I have to say it's super powerful to know that 3 fierce Kaurs are leading some of our largest organizations. Our community is definitely in really strong hands. So let's starting off with the Q&A. You know, Sikhi definitely preaches gender equality, and yet at the same time, most of our historical leaders, and whether we talk about from in Guruji's time all through like even today, we see that a lot of the historical leaders have been men. Not all. We do have a lot of leaders that we look up to that are female, but it's not dominant. It's not the dominant narrative that's shared. So I would love for you all to share what it took for you all to get into the roles that you are here, and what challenges have you faced along the way?
I can start us off if you'd like. You know, I'm very honored to be here and part of this all-women panel. I don't think I've ever been on an all-women panel before, so this is like especially very exciting and thrilling for me. I think it's fairly true that women are not, you know, equally represented in traditional leadership roles, and this is probably the case in Sikh organizations. And has been in the past. And, you know, generally, even when we look at the trends, like before I logged on here, I checked the statistics and looking at like nonprofit organizations, right? Like women, what I read was that like women make up a majority of nonprofit sector jobs, over 70%, but then they are less than half of them are in ED roles. And then even fewer hold board positions, even fewer hold board chair positions, even fewer opportunities for people of color and women of color and gender non-conforming people. And interestingly, as the budget of an organization increases, the likelihood of a woman leading that organization conversely decreases. So, I mean, these are the trends that we are facing. And I think in the Sikh community and in our Sikh organizations, I'm sure that's been the case. But I think the fact that we have this panel here today is actually challenging a lot of those norms and those disparities, which I think is really exciting. And I can speak specifically to my experience with the Sikh Family Center. You know, we are I work with an all women staff and board, and we occupy a very unique space. Because of this, I think we have the ability and can recognize and are particularly mindful of the fact that I think a lot of the people on our team hold a variety of roles, whether it's, you know, parent or partner or caretaker of elderly parents. You know, we recognize that, and we try to, you know, to some degree offer some flexibility, part-time roles, flexibility in hours. We've always been virtual even before the pandemic. And that's really so that people who work with us feel empowered to like live these very full personal lives, which they absolutely should, because that is life, and then also take on leadership positions within the organization. But, you know, that being said, there are also unique challenges that we have faced and continue to face as an organization, because we are primarily made up of women and also work on issues that significantly impact women, not only women, but significantly women. I think one of the things that we hear a lot is like the critique of like, you know, why do we even need this organization in the first place? And I think that legitimacy factor is like something that we have to overcome. And sometimes, you know, we step into spaces which are predominantly men, made up of men, and we get this question even like we formed in 2009, and we still get this question like 13 years later, right? So that's to say, I think people are concerned that talking about domestic violence, talking about abuse, supporting survivors, you know, that might potentially give our community bad press. You know, I think we hear a lot that you're like airing out our dirty laundry, you know, our community's dirty laundry, and sharing private matters in this very public way, and really making us more vulnerable. And, you know, I to some degree, I get the concerns, but I think when I think about like the culture changing work that we're doing, this is actually part of that work. It's like explaining who we are and sharing that there's a need for us to even be here in the first place, right? And also recognition that survivors of violence and abuse, like they deserve our support. These are issues that impact our entire community. Our mission and our goal is not to air out dirty laundry. It's really to make sure that people are safe and secure in their homes. And this is part of Sikhi and our faith tradition. And it really compels us to support everyone within our community, and also people who are facing threats or are being victimized by other people within our community as well. So I think one strategy that we do is we try to really align and remember like the values of Sikhi and what we hold dear, and really making sure that we're not living in contradiction to that. So that's kind of one way to approach it. But I think those are some of the unique challenges that we face specifically. And I'm sure like everyone that has been involved in Sikh Family Center has like experienced that to some degree at some point.
I'll jump in and go next. And I was kind of like thinking through the question, because I don't know if I had a great answer to it initially, but as I was sitting here thinking and sort of listening and reflecting back into, you know, my experience and sort of my time with the community. So as far as organizing, my experience is probably a little bit different than most people's. You know, I remember organizing with the community in the 80s and 90s. So this was pre 9/11. This was, you know, there were different issues going on. SALDEF is actually a 25-year-old organization. So if folks remember the media representation in the 90s, it certainly wasn't great either. And at that point, we had no organization to sort of speak out and sort of represent or share that those representations were inaccurate. But, you know, my family, growing up, we lived in many places. We started off in the Maryland area and in Bethesda, and lived in Toronto and Florida and New Jersey. And every place we went to, they were very active in the Gurdwara. I was very active. There were opportunities created, and even leadership opportunities for both, you know, men and women, or boys and girls. And so oddly enough, were created, they had to be created. It's there broadly, but that we got an opportunity to participate in a way that was, you know, equal regardless of gender. And I know, again, that's maybe an anomaly, but I feel like part of my ability to even go on and take on the responsibilities I did at such a young age and running my company. And a lot of those other things was because I had those opportunities that were created through my community, and because my community and my family and the Sangha poured into me. And that's what I want to see for other people. Like, I want to carry that forward, because I've also seen the opposite, and I've been personally part of the opposite. As I mentioned, I've moved around quite a lot growing up. I was in and out of schools probably every couple of years. So I would have to make new friends, get to know a new community, get to know a new Sangha, get to know a new area. And there was definitely times where I felt alone, where I felt like, you know, literally the new kid on the block, or trying to make those adjustments. And there are times where, you know, I could have gone into a very dark place, or I could have not felt like I had that support. This was sadly the days before email. You know, I had a pen pal for a while, but you know, those things, it gets tough. And I think that is part of why I'm so passionate about the programming that we do. And I love, Deep, that you talked about kind of the sort of the preventative work that you do ahead of time in changing the culture, changing conversation, and creating sort of more of this open space, because I really do feel like our community needs more of that. And especially for Kaurs, you know, a lot of our narrative isn't in the forefront. You know, we're starting to be in more conversations, we're starting to lead conversations, but I know at SALDEF we've had conversations in my, you know, in the time in my leadership that I know the organization has never had before. You know, talking about issues in our community, you know, as Deep mentioned, is issues of sexual abuse when that come up, even most recently around reproductive rights and where we stand as a community, and how I personally felt that issue. And we are, well, we're not an all-female organization. We do have definitely skews very heavily on, you know, female employees, and but it's part of leading that conversation and making sure there's an open space and hearing all different perspectives, because we're all on this journey of Sikh, you know, we're all there together, and we're all trying to learn and interpret it and incorporate it into our life experiences. And I think that's what we bring into the table. Like SALDEF, we talk a lot about representation. We talk about it in the context of Sikh American representation. And this is just another way where, you know, a perspective, the representation of a female perspective, a Sikh American female perspective, can be in those spaces and influence decisions and be part of that dialogue.
I want to echo everything. I mean, I'm like listening and absorbing so much, because it's all so relatable. So thank you to Deep and Kiran for sharing your insights there. You know, the Sikh Coalition, I'm the third executive director in a row that's core-led, female-led, and I can see that. I can see that change that has come to the organization over that time period. I can feel it, right, in the HR policies we have, in the way that we approach gender equity when we're thinking about outward facing, whether it's photos or panels or other things that we're doing. You know, I can see that has been shaped intentionally that way, thanks to the leadership of those who have come before me. You know, just 3 months in, I've been able to absorb that and appreciate that. I did want to touch on something, you know, that I think about a lot. You know, I mentioned that I started my career volunteering for the Sikh Coalition and just like walked over to the Capitol and did that advocacy work. And it was the strength of the community. It really was what Kiran was saying. It was the strength of the community. It was the strength of Sikhi. It was really just that passion and belief and knowing that what I was doing was important, that I think gave me that courage to do something that courageous. And that is something that I've had stick with me and be my North Star wherever I've gone. So going from doing that kind of work to a large progressive think tank where there were 300 plus of us, and I'm the only Sikh woman or Sikh in general there, trying to create new spaces and work lifting up our community's voice, a community that's they hadn't heard of before, that they hadn't focused on before, and kind of pushing out my elbows in those tables, in those conference rooms, and making sure I was that voice. And thinking about, there were so many times where I felt like I should cower and not say anything, and this is not the right space. But then I would remember the girl that was able to just do that in college and walk up to the Hill and do that advocacy work. And then I also, at some point in my career, I heard this saying that sticks with me everywhere I go. If you're not at the table, you will be on the menu. And so if I am that voice in a room that can add the Sikh perspective, speak up for our community, I need to do that to make sure that we're not on the menu and that we're actually having a voice in the policies that are being shaped, or the projects that are being proposed, or the op-ed that is being written about X issue of the day, right? Whatever it was that I was doing. And I carried that with me both at the Center for American Progress and Planned Parenthood. Again, these giant organizations, right? 300, 500 plus individuals where your voice can very much get lost. And as women of color and as Sikh women, it's easy to, again, cower, but remembering those things and having those as kind of my mantra and my North Star has been helpful in building that voice and being that voice too for the community. So I would just add that. For me, it was that. And then the last thing I'll say is networks. Having mentors is so critically important. So, Kiran was talking about the programs that they lead, networking opportunities that you can find, across, whether it's your own community or other communities, having those professional networks, those personal networks. They always say it takes a village. That's very true in this case too. And so that would be, I think, the second thing that really helped me along the way, is having those networks and having that village.
Thank you all so much for sharing, and so many good quotes to take home with you if you're listening. I love that. If you're not at the table, you'll be on the menu. I've never heard of that one, but that's a pretty great one, and definitely echo a lot of what you all shared with mentorship. That can really change your trajectory in an industry, figuring out what's right for you. It's so great to have someone who's been through it, be able to listen and bounce ideas off of. So great advice there. We have some questions coming in on the chat box, so feel free to send them in. We'll incorporate them as we're going, so we make sure we get y'all's voices heard. But one listener said, "My hands up to all of you. As someone who also works in social justice, I know firsthand how much we carry on our shoulders. Please share some self-care tips that you use to avoid burnout that have worked for you." My personal self-care tip, probably you all saw, is Hiraji. But please feel free to share yours. Would love to hear them.
I can start. I'm filled with quotes today. Another quote that I love is, "You can't take care of the world if you don't take care of yourself," or take care of yourself in order to take care of the world, one way or the other. But it's so true. And I think I learned that the hard way. I was working at the Center for American Progress during the 2016 election, and my job was senior organizing director. And basically what that meant was I was all the protests and marches you saw outside the White House or outside the Capitol, dealing with immigration or reproductive health care, birth control access, whatever we were fighting that day. I was out there planning all of that and kind of putting those together. And what started happening was I was starting to burn out. And I wasn't able to give my team as much of me as I should have been able to. And the work started to suffer in the sense that I was missing things that I wouldn't have missed otherwise. And so as much as it feels like there's a fire to put out every day, and that is how it is in social justice work, every day there's a rapid response moment, every day there is a fight to be had. It is equally important that in order to serve your role best, your team best, your organization best, that you're able to balance that with self-care, stepping away, turning off the news, right, and doing something mindless. And so I've made it a intentional habit. And I know our development managers on the attendees right now, but she's probably laughing hearing me say this. I'll say it often to folks, like, guys, I got to get off this video. Like, I need to do that. I've been on videos all day. My brain no longer functions. Like, we got to take a break here, right? And doing that intentionally, being really intentional about taking that time so that we can use our time productively, right? They say work smart, not hard. And so trying to think of that often. And so when I can log off, it's like trash TV, nothing serious. something comedic and fun, playing with my 1-year-old, going for a walk, working out, right? Like as much as I can do to step away completely, because I notice when I come back, I'm actually much more productive and probably a better leader that way.
Yeah, for me, it's going for walks, like just being outside, especially when I'm home all day on Zoom calls, just being able to like get some exercise, be outdoors, not pick up my phone for like 20, 30 minutes. It's nice. And the other thing for me, I really like music. So just listening to music, any kind of music, whether that's kirtan or just generally any genre, really, I find relaxing. And agree with you, Anisha. I definitely some like comedic videos, YouTube, anything to kind of get my mind, especially if I have like 5-10 minutes between one meeting or another, and I just want to clear my head just to get, especially if the topics are heavy. So yeah, those are some of the things I do for self-care. And then just, I think it's also just important to step back every once in a while and remind yourself why you're in the space, because there will be days where there's going to be defeats and there's going to be failures and things are going to seem really tough. And, you know, it seems sometimes it's easy to let that sort of seep in and say, you know, I can't do this, or I should be in the space, or I don't know if I'm really making a difference. But a lot of these issues take time. I mean, these issues have, you know, whether we're looking at civil rights, hate crimes, issues of religious freedoms, I mean, these are issues that have been going on for a long time, and we're making an incremental progress, and it's, you know, it's a journey. So it's important to just kind of, again, step back and remind yourself why you're in the space. Sometimes even I got this tip actually from a friend of mine last year. I made a vision board, which I kept in my living room, of just it also included self-care, but as well as kind of like what were my priorities and what was I really trying to do. And to me, having that kind of sitting in my living room every day, reminding me of where my focus should be and my priorities was really helpful.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add. I think I agree with everything that Kiran and Anisha said. I think it's very easy, like when you're working in a line of work where you're focused on meeting other people's needs, that you sometimes forget your own. And burnout culture is very rampant in the nonprofit sector. People are getting stressed, dealing with vicarious trauma if you're working directly with people who are impacted. And I know, like for me personally, as someone who like developed a chronic illness in the past year, this has become even more important to take time off and think about, okay, how am I going to build myself up when I have time to myself, and where do I need to create those boundaries? So I personally, I love gardening. It's something that I started doing in the past few years. And I think during the pandemic, especially, it's a thing that I've nurtured and had the chance to nurture, I will say. I also love doing kirtan, and also, I can't believe I'm saying this in the same sentence, but I also watch a lot of bad reality TV. So I do all of those things, and it does bring me joy and also helps balance me in a lot of ways. And I think the other thing is, yeah, taking a step away, taking a break, and taking the time you need otherwise. And I'm really grateful to work with an organization and also like an employer who allows me the space to do that. I know that for a lot of people, that's not the case, unfortunately. And I think, but you know, I'm grateful to have those opportunities and be able to do that and feel very supported in that way. And I wish everyone had that chance. And I think that's something that we can all kind of work towards, because it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I love that what you all said, and that everything that you said is individual and unique, because that's the biggest thing about self-care. It's about yourself. So what might be your self-care might cause someone else more burnout. Like gardening to me sounds miserable, especially in this Texas heat right now. But for Deep, that seems to be her joy. And totally echo the vision board. Mine's on the back screen of my computer. So, because I'm not creative with posters and stuff, so I just need a digital version, but I love vision boards. Thank you all for sharing that. So let's talk a little bit more about core and leadership positions. And so what do you all think is the impact of having more cores in leadership positions just across the board, whether it be nonprofit leadership, board leadership, or even in the for-profit community?
I mean, go ahead.
No, please go ahead, Kiran.
Okay, yeah, I feel like I kind of covered it before, and I'll maybe think through if there's anything else I can add, but I think really having those different perspectives at the table. And I know growing up, you know, a lot of us didn't see, and we still don't see as many Kaurs in leadership as certainly we could. So I think also it's important for that next generation to realize they can be in these spaces. I think that's really powerful. And I feel like Kaurs are really great about networking and kind of bringing each other up. And I would love to see that network grow. Again, happy to be in this space with all of you amazing women. And I feel like, you know, and many of you mentioned mentors and networks as part of your personal journeys, and it was part of mine as well. And I feel like building that out and continuing to grow that network is really important for us and for this, for the future generation.
Yeah, I think I just have to add, you know, the style of how you approach this work. I think like there's this common stereotype that like to be a leader, you have to be very loud and like very directive and very even forceful. And this is like this very overtly masculine presentation to leadership that like I think we've, I don't know, generally have this perception of this, like, you know, it's this white cis male standard that we often have in our head. And I think for me personally, that's never rang true to my style. Even as an attorney, that's not how I do work. And I know a lot of women who don't work like that and who don't do this work like that. And so I think one thing that we bring is that there is recognition that there is no singular way to be a leader, right? And having more Kaurs in leadership positions, what that does is it opens up and expands the opportunities that we have of what is possible. It expands like our creativity to tackle some of the issues that we're working on. So I think that's something, and I think of like even the work, and I think of all these questions from the perspective and lens of Sikh Family Center, like what are we doing? And so when I think about like Sikh Family Center, I think of like, you know, when we think about the Sunya circles that we do, where we're hosting Kaurs who want to talk about, you know, their perspectives and their experiences, and they want to share their wisdom with us. You know, we have these small discussion circles which is the opportunity for women to talk with each other. And that is like very much like part of our Sikh practice. Like we see this everywhere, the practice of listening, the practice, it's such a fundamental part of our spiritual growth. And I feel like, what do we do when we apply that to our relationships, to the work that we do? Like that is very different from how things have been done in the past, right? And I think one thing that Kaurs bring to the table is the ability to work in partnership with each other and to lead by listening, which is often something that we don't even think about or may not recognize as like a huge leadership quality, but very much is, I think. And then I think having those continuous feedback loops in the process. And I think, you know, when we think about what this does, I think it's like communication. It promotes not just like solidarity, which we talk a lot about, but also like actual genuine connection and like love and care and compassion for each other. So I think that's something that Kaurs can bring that I think, you know, just one perspective of what they can offer.
Everything you just said, Deep, I think is hitting it on the nail. There's so many studies that have shown that women are better at multitasking. Women are more compassionate. And that's through evolution too, taking care of a baby while cooking, while, you know, it's real. But those are the types of things that you want your leaders to have, right? The ability to do that multitasking, time management, compassion, listening, empathy, all of these qualities that women are more expected to have are actually our strengths, right? And sometimes can be seen as weaknesses, but actually are exactly what you want in a leader. Combine that with, you know, teachings from Sikhi, where our gurus were intentional about that gender equality piece and that strength that comes from that as well. And you've got this formula really, right, for really amazing leadership to come out of Kaurs. And so any organization, whether we're talking about our 3 organizations or others out there or companies out there that have leaders who are coming from the Sikh community, especially Sikh women, you have that added perspective and that added strength, I would say, honestly, coming from our community and our religion, and those added qualities that women possess that I just walked through. You know, you've got like this well-rounded formula really for a great leader. So organizations or companies that are thinking of hiring women, but especially Sikh women, you know, will gain that value. And I see it again every day when I'm getting used to this job and in this role, I'm seeing the great work that my predecessors did to grow the Sikh Coalition to where it is. And it is in part because of those experiences as Sikh women.
Definitely agree with all of that. I was talking to someone today actually who was saying like, the world is starting to see the power of women as we see more elected women coming into office and more women being placed into positions, that it's not just the communities are starting to see the impact. And the more we can get away from gender-based leadership and things like transformational leadership, I think we'll continue to see men start to take on some of these qualities in workplaces as well. So we have about 7 minutes left, and I'd like, there may be some young Kaurs listening, although I'm sure if we put this on TikTok, we'd get more hits. But what advice would you give to the next generation of female leaders? And what would you give to those maybe and wanting to enter the nonprofit sector and trying to give back to the community?
I can start. I mean, I think we touched on this a little bit, but build those networks. You know, reach out to us, reach out to others that you know in the community who can give you that guidance that you might need, connect you with the right people in the fields that you want to work in, and be that support system and that village that we talked about to get you there when sometimes you might lose your way or you feel unsure, right? To be that that sounding board that you might need. So definitely networking within the community, outside the community as much as you can, and building that village for yourself. The other thing I would say is just think of what drives you, because this work can get really hard and it can get messy. And so you always want to know what your North Star is. So what drives you? What's your passion? And really follow that, listen to your heart, listen to yourself, and follow that and be true to that, because that's what will actually carry you. And that'll show through your work too. And it'll feel genuine for those around you as well.
I would just say my pieces of advice would be to believe in yourself and to take up space. And just in my experience, especially when you're sort of the first in a room, maybe the only Kaur, the only female or only Sikh American, it can get tough. And sometimes you're not sort of automatically given the benefit of the doubt, or you have to work harder to prove yourself. And to me, I've been in those spaces so often. I think for me, what has kind of kept me grounded is just, you know, having that belief in myself, and sort of the rest is noise, right? I mean, you have your support system, but ultimately it's your confidence, your belief that you can do it, even when things get tough, even when there's, you know, things that may not go your way, that you have the tools within yourself to get through it. And just kind of that internal journey, which again, I think there is a correlation with Sikhi, because we do have a lot of internal work that we do as we follow Sikhi and we're in our practice. To me, I think that's huge, because a lot of the naysayers, or a lot of people that will doubt you, and of course, as I mentioned, I was running a company in my 20s, so there's a lot of people that looked at me and said, no way, like, you know, this is not happening. And I said, this is what I want to be. And Anisha said, as Anisha mentioned, you know what you're doing, why you're passionate about it. And in the end, if you are committed, and if you do the work and you stay in it and you're passionate, I mean, you will see the results. But that's what I've seen, you know, time and time again. And just want to echo, I think what we'll all say is we are all here to support you. So please do feel free to reach out. We're happy, I can speak for me, but I think I'm probably speaking for Anisha and Deep as well. Happy to be part of your network and support system.
Yeah, I echo everything that's already been said. And, you know, I am also a resource. Yes, feel free to reach out. As like a law student advisor, putting that hat on is like, make sure to identify what your strengths are as well and tap into those, right? Like think about if you have like skills in strategy or writing or like fundraising or marketing or even direct services, and find out what you're good at and look for opportunities in those areas. And I think similar to what Kiran said, like doing that internal work, also engaging in self-reflection along the way, you know, and not just how you're doing and how you're performing, but also like in the work that you're doing, whose needs are being met and who's also being left out, and constantly thinking about that, because I think that's how you really push the envelope in terms of the work that you're doing and making sure that the work that you're doing is inclusive for everyone. And then remembering that no one is perfect. That is literally the definition of perfect, is like, you cannot reach that. So I think for me personally, as a perfectionist who aims for that, but falls short many times, just remember that it's impossible to be perfect. And so you will doubt yourself many times and wonder whether a role, opportunity, or anything that comes up is something that you're capable of. And if it's something you're really passionate about and you really want to do, go do it. So, and I think when you're in those roles, make sure to pay it forward and be a support system for those who are seeking or hoping to pursue similar trajectories.
That was beautiful. I feel like I need to write those in this order on my mirror. It's like, figure out your why, what you're good at, take up space, and then give yourself grace when you make mistakes. So beautiful advice for our young Kaurs and for all of us listening, because quite frankly, we all need those reminders. Well, thank you so much for your time today and for the incredible work that you are doing. Truly, your seva does not go unseen, and most of us are not doing it. And so we are super grateful that you give up your work lives on a day-to-day basis to do this work and to do what your calling is. DVN viewers and donors, if you would like to donate to Sikh Coalition, Sikh Family Center, and SALDEF, please visit the platform, help these Kaurs build up their organizations and continue to do more work. You can donate at dvnetwork.org / for Sikh Coalition / Sikh.coalition. This is going to be in the chat box. You're not going to remember what I'm saying. And then right now, donations to Sikh Family Center and SALDEF will also be doubled because we have specific campaigns going on for them. The Sikh Family Center's community advocate training is going on right now. So log on to dvnetwork.org / training for more information there. And SALDEF is raising funds for 2 impactful programs that are going to help increase Sikh American voice. Thank you all so much for attending. We really appreciate everyone on the call. Thank you to Mandeep Singh and Mahadi at DV Network for setting all of this up. Your seva also does not go unnoticed. We really appreciate the work that you are doing for all of our organizations. Have a beautiful evening, everyone. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.